Part 4. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 31. Outer southern suburbs of Huaishan City. Large stretches of green hillsides undulate like a thick green carpet. One of the slopes is sparsely dotted with some small yellow and white dots, all of which are single and double-story buildings. Most of these small buildings are cube-shaped and made of light yellow and white stones. Green vines are climbing everywhere on the edge of the small building and on the doorframe, and some vines still have small white and yellow flowers. Under one of the double-story buildings, there are two round arch openings, forming a semi-open shade area. There were 2 tables in the doorway, and 4 people were sitting at the table on the left, drinking tea and relaxing. 2 middle-aged men each brought a young woman and sat opposite each other. The older man had a beautiful mustache, was wearing a neat and exquisite black suit, and was holding a brown wooden cane in one hand. He looked about 40 years old. He picked up the wooden cup of black tea on the table and took a sip. Mr. Kelly made a special trip to talk to me about his collection of doomed antiques. This kind of enthusiasm is indeed rare. His eyes fell on the face of the middle-aged man sitting opposite. The other person has a pale complexion, short light blonde curly hair, a blonde mustache on his chin, and is wearing a neat white suit. It gives people an elegant and relaxed temperament. He is also much younger, probably only 30 years old. The most important thing is that the other party's eyes are like the finest rubies, crystal clear and exceptionally clear. Mr. Mercury's enthusiasm is what amazed me. He not only traveled everywhere to collect doomed antiques and jewelry, but even traced their origins to their original sources. The man sighed. Actually, who of us collectors are not mainly interested in these things? The life we look forward to the most is every time we come home, we see the objects and antiques placed in our homes, each of which has a mysterious origin. It's just like. It's as if our own residence and life have become full of mystery, as if it is filled with unknown power. Tali Mercury added with a smile. Not bad. That's the feeling, the blonde man nodded. Life is always so boring. So what we yearn for is to make ourselves and our lives full of mystery and fun. Perhaps this is our greatest interest in collecting doomed antiques. That's right, Tali Mercury nodded with deep feeling, and glanced at the other man's wrist inadvertently. In the beginning, I accidentally obtained an antique of bad luck because of handling a case. Unexpectedly, I became more and more obsessed with it later on. I started collecting this thing. So many years have passed in the blink of an eye, and there are hundreds of bad luck antiques collected at home, whether real or fake. More than 10 years have passed in the blink of an eye. Time flies so fast. Hundreds of items. The blonde man's eyes lit up. That's really a big deal. It's worthy of the famous detective Tali Mercury. It must not be the same as the ones you just took out. So when you come here this time, is it also related to the antiques of doom? That's not all. Tali Mercury shook his head, took the pipe handed over by Miss Cillin, took a puff, and slowly blew out the smoke ring. This time I came here to track down an old rival among criminals for the serial murder and robbery case. Now that the case has come to an end, I have some time to come here to investigate. Is that so? Could it be the famous golden ring thief? The blonde man reached out and pinched his beard thoughtfully. Seeing the detective nodding in affirmation, he continued, the golden ring thief has committed dozens of crimes throughout the Federation. It is said that apart from you, only another equally famous detective has ever had direct contact with him. I wonder if you can tell me more about the golden ring. I'm sorry. It's not that I don't want to say it, but the police headquarters has a relevant confidentiality agreement. Tali Mercury shrugged. Okay, I'm going to go to Yinshaw Castle in the afternoon. I don't know if Mr. Kelly is interested in talking to him. I'll go with you. Oh? Yinshaw Castle? I have heard about this dilapidated castle in Huaishan City for so long. It seems to be a legacy inherited by an officer. Now there is no money to take care of it. Everything inside has been sold off. The man Kelly whispered. I heard that the castle was originally planned to be sold, but it is too dilapidated and the location is too remote. It is inconvenient to buy anything. Only those who have visited it have no intention of buying it. Are you? Want to buy it? It's just a visit, it won't be a big deal if I buy it. Tail-Eye Mercury smiled. He turned his face and whispered a few words to Miss Sillon. The latter nodded, stood up and walked towards another double-story building not far away, and soon disappeared into the dense green bushes. The vegetation here is very dense, and there is no sign of desolation even in autumn. If it were not too far away from my hometown, I would like to move here and settle down. The Mercury in the tower puffed out a smoke ring and said deeply. That's right. That's just me. Once I settle down, I don't want to leave, Kelly replied with a smile. He also said a few words to the woman with platinum ponytail next to him, who immediately got up and walked towards the black car on the road outside the small building. It takes 2 hours to drive to Yinshaw Castle from here. It's already almost 5 o'clock in the afternoon. If you go at this time, it will be evening when you come back. Or is Mr. Tari planning to spend the night there? Kelly stood up and asked doubtfully. I do occasionally spend the night there these days, which is nothing unusual. I have discussed it with the owner of the castle, Naswis, and paid a rent, and the castle was rented to me for 2 months. Anyway, everything inside has been emptied, and he is not afraid of any belongings being taken away. Tail-Eye Mercury stood up and said, Okay, Mr. Kelly, you don't need to drive your car over here. There is no place to refuel around here, so it's better to go there by carriage. That's true. So I will have to disturb you for a day or two. It's okay. We all share the same interests. It's rare for me to meet a friend who has the same interests and hobbies as me. To be honest, in the circle of friends, my hobbies have always been criticized by everyone. Okay, without further ado, let me lead the carriage over first, and we'll meet in the driveway. Well, see you later. Kelly stood at the table, took a sip of black tea, and watched Tail-Eye Mercury slowly walk through the grass and walk towards a black 2-wheel carriage driving in the driveway in the distance. Miss Sillon, wearing a white trench coat, just jumped out of the carriage and stood to one side waiting for him. The driveway twists and turns, spreading into the distance, like a long gray snake, stretching into the distance. In the far distance of the front driveway, there are 2 ox carts moving slowly, dragging golden wheat. A warm breeze blew over, lifting the hem of Kelly's white suit, and the air was filled with a leisurely and comfortable slow pace of life. He touched his chin. This beard is really realistic. Of course, the white blonde ponytail woman who left earlier returned to his side. The route to Yinshaw Castle requires a carriage ride for at least 2 hours, and then we have to walk on a mountain road, which is relatively remote. We may have to spend the night there. Mr. Tari promised me to stay overnight in the castle. Kelly smiled. Let's go, don't keep our great detective waiting. The woman looked at Kelly's back as he slowly walked away, with a trace of doubt in his eyes. Although he knew it was a disguise, in every aspect, Kelly was much more mature and real than Garen. Not at all like a teenager. It's as if Galen is Kelly's disguise, and Galen who becomes Kelly is the one who truly reveals his true nature. Shaking her head slightly and no longer thinking about it, she quickly followed him, and the two of them walked one after another towards the carriage waiting in the driveway in the distance. Before getting in the car, Garen casually pulled a small purple-red flower from the grass beside him and sniffed it gently. Only when he got closer did he see many small black insects crawling in the center of the flower, like ants, and the flower had no fragrance at all. The 4 of them got on the double carriage, with the 2 in Tail-Eye sitting in the front row, and Garen and Grace sitting in the back row. The riding whip cracked lightly, and immediately 2 strong yellow horses slowly dragged the carriage forward, and the bells on their necks began to jingle. Seeing Garen picking a purple flower in his hand, Tail-Eye Mercury said with a smile. The flowers here don't have much fragrance, but they strangely attract a lot of bugs. I don't know why. Garen stretched out his index finger and let a small black insect crawl up the petals of his finger, tickling it. The little bug is like a black ladybug that has been shrunk many times. Its two semicircular wings open and close from time to maintain balance. There are always different strange phenomena around the origin of the Doom antiques. Isn't this normal? He smiled. If it were like any other place, we wouldn't be attracted to come here. It's a pity that you didn't bring your other antiques with you, otherwise I might be lucky enough to feast my eyes on it. Tailai Mercury laughed. I originally thought you were a liar who boasted wildly, but I didn't expect that you would see through the few antique imitations of bad luck that I picked up at random. I didn't expect to meet a confidant like you here. I originally thought that only I just love researching Doom antiques. Me too. Garen removed a petal, gently popped out of the carriage, and laughed as well. But what is it about Yinsha Castle that deserves your attention? I have lived here for so long and I don't really know. Tailai Mercury handed the riding whip to Lan and asked her to drive on his behalf. At the same time, he took out a stack of white documents from his leather bag and handed it over with his backhand. This is some information I collected, please take a look. Garen took it and looked at the title on the first page, The owner of the castle died unexpectedly. Below is a large report text, talking about the process of discovering death. Turning to the second page, there is also a similar title. The third page is the same, but there is an extra photo, and it happens to be the pattern of Yinsha Castle. 3 consecutive owners of the castle died unexpectedly, and the murderer was unknown. They all died peacefully on their own beds without any signs, just like an old man whose life was exhausted. The strange thing is that the 3 owners are all young and strong middle-aged officers. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 32. The most recent person was the owner of Yinsha Castle 30 years ago. We don't know exactly which antique of bad luck it is. This time we went there specifically to check out the specific situation and see if we could find a hidden antique of bad luck, Tailai Mercury added. Garen nodded. He did know that the so-called antique of doom was most likely the bronze cross he carried with him. Although the potential that the metal currently provides is very small, and it only takes a week to improve a little, it is better than no improvement at all, and it is better than nothing. Garen was also very curious as to why potential antiques could provide potential and why they were called doomed antiques. So it was also based on this idea that I agreed to Tailai Mercury's invitation and went to Yinsha Castle together. The carriage drove from noon to the afternoon, and the orange-red sun had already sunk halfway below the horizon. It finally stopped at the top of a yellow-green slope. Below the slope was a continuous green grove. The 4 people got off the carriage and stood at the top of the slope looking forward. In the distance of the continuous dark green woods, on the same higher sloping hill, a grey-white dilapidated castle is clearly visible. The castle looked like it had been burned by fire, with grey and black traces of smoke everywhere. No trace of greenery. The exterior of the castle, the lawn surrounded by railings, and some surrounding small trees were all grey and black, as if they had just been hit by a fire not long ago. The entire castle has 3 peaks, shaped like a mountain. The surface is densely covered with square cross windows. Looking from a distance, it is dark inside the windows and nothing can be seen clearly. This is Yinsha Castle. It is said that there was a fire 30 years ago, and the subsequent owner did not have the money to repair it, so it became what it is now. Unfortunately, it was still a famous garden castle in the records. Yinsha means the surface seems to be covered with a layer of silver gauze, which is beautiful and dreamy, hence the name. Tailai Mercury pointed at the castle and sighed. Grace wondered on the side, isn't that right? Mr. Tailai, there was a fire 30 years ago. Why is the castle still so grey and black now? How is it possible that not even a little bit of green plants have grown? Miss Silan took over. No one knows this. Some people speculate that the ashes covered the growth of surrounding plants. Others speculate that there are no plants on the land itself that can grow. There are even a few weird rumors, but they are not credible. Have you asked the people around here? Grace frowned. There is no human habitation within a radius of 30 miles around the castle. The surrounding terrain is relatively complex and not suitable for growing crops, so the nearest farms and small towns and villages have to be traveled a long way to get to. Garen touched the fake beard on his chin. In other words, we may have to rest here all night? Is it okay to eat and drink? Talai Mercury nodded. No problem, Ilan, and I have been resting here for many days. Apart from the inconvenience of going out and communicating with people, the environment here is still very good and suitable for self-cultivation. Okay, let's continue walking and look closer from here. In fact, we still have to walk a long distance, at least half an hour's walk to reach the castle. What about the carriage? Bundle it here, and someone will pick it up later. I have made all arrangements. It's just that we can take a carriage when we come here, but if we go out, we can only walk. It takes more than 4 hours to walk from here to the nearest town of Konu. Only then can we get there, Talai Mercury explained. So we have to plan to stay here for a few days. This is not bad, it is equivalent to a vacation. Grace, you go back to the city and let me know. Garen lowered his voice. Just say that I am a guest at a friend's house, so don't worry at home. I will go back in a few days. Grace knew what he meant, and he asked her to help hide it. After all, Garen was only a high school student, and running too far would make people worried. Then why don't I just drive back and get the carriage back to town? That's fine, Talai Mercury nodded in agreement. The three of them watched Grace driving the car back until it gradually disappeared into the curve of the driveway before they came back to their senses. Let's go, it's getting late. If you arrive early, you can have a good night's rest. Talai Mercury held a long black bag in his hand. I brought a shotgun, so I can hunt some game around. Barbecue. That's really good. You're so thoughtful. Garen also laughed. Scylla smiled and lifted the red bag in her hand. I also brought some spices and tea leaves and coffee beans. There is a small river nearby where I can get water to make tea and coffee. Badly ground coffee is not a good thing. I have a secret weapon. Haha, Scylla smiled mysteriously. Mr. Kelly rarely goes out for picnics, right? Unlike us, sometimes we chase criminals into deep mountains and forests, so we have to learn these preparations. That's true, Garen shrugged. I just brought some emergency tools and a set of casual clothes. I also brought some seasonings and other things, but I'm not as thoughtful as the two of you. Okay, let's go. Go to the castle early and tidy up the room. Here we will use the oil lamps we brought earlier. Mercury in the tower looked at the sun that had completely set and said in a low voice. Otherwise it would be too late and it would be inconvenient. Right. The three of them walked quickly along the slope to Yinsha Castle. Entering the iron gate of the castle, the ground is a strange color of black-gray mixed with white powder. It looks like a road paved with ashes from a fire. There is a triangular cone lighting fire platform on the left and right sides. It is built with a black metal frame and has a brazier on top. I don't know what kind of metal it is. The fire platform is connected to the black fence, dividing the castle and the woods outside into two sides, like two worlds. Outside are dark green dense trees, and inside the fence is a scene like a fire burning through it. The lawn inside the castle shows a pale yellow color, and a few large black trees that are about to die give people a sense of lifeless silence. The three of them walked into the gate carrying their things and walked along the straight road paved with black and gray until they reached the gate of the castle. The door is an arched wood-clad iron door, dark, with a pale circle in the center, and inside the circle is a wide keyhole. Talai Mercury took out a brass key and inserted it, turned it several times, and then pushed the door hard. With a bang, the door opened inwards, revealing an empty hall inside. Garin followed Scylla into the hall and looked around. There was nothing in the entire hall, no furniture, no decorations, no carpets, even the wall lamp holders had been stripped off and sold. The whole thing is grey and black. A beam of reddish sunlight slanted down from the skylight facing the door, and it was projected on the black ground, making the entire hall even more empty and silent. "Let's book your bedroom first." Tali Mercury closed the door and hung the key back on his waist. "You pick a room to rest in. Then we have to prepare dinner ourselves. It's quite novel to have a picnic in the castle yourself. Haha." Under the leadership of Scylla, Garin chose a room on the right side of the castle as a bedroom, arranged the iron bed inside, and put in a spare bed before sleeping. After hurriedly finishing dinner, it became completely dark. There was not enough kerosene in the castle to light it for a long time, so the three of them made an appointment to rest early and get up the next day to explore the entire castle. Entered the room, sat on the bed and rested for a while. The room was unusually quiet. A rectangular door-like floor-to-ceiling window was opened on the side. The ground was covered with light red hexagonal stone tiles, densely packed into a flat floor. There is nothing else in the room except a big bed. There is also an iron frame for mosquito netting around the big bed. Galen sat on the bed and didn't dare to move much. If he moved a little, the rust on the iron frame might fall off. The kerosene lamp beside the bed was placed on a makeshift stool, emitting a pale yellow flickering light. Garin walked to the window wearing only his underwear and looked down. It was dark outside the window. Not a single person could be seen on the grey-black lawn at night, and there was no human habitation at all when looking toward the mountains in the distance. No sound was heard throughout the castle. Mercury and Scylla in the tower went to bed early in 2 rooms respectively. It seemed like there was only one room in the whole castle with people and light. Garin opened the window, and the cool air outside suddenly rushed in, and the faint sound of an owl could be heard in the distance. The dim moonlight shone down, and I could barely see the scenery outside. It's better to go to bed early. Tomorrow we'll see what clues Tali Mercury finds here. This guy might have figured out that I put on makeup. Let's not talk about my brain, but my observation ability is not that strong standing. After practicing boxing in the room, Garin slowly stopped, closed most of the windows, and lay down on the bed to rest. I don't know how long it took. Garin turned over and was drowsily asleep. Suddenly, the door of the room opened with a creak, as if someone pushed it open quietly from the outside. He was suddenly startled, sat up and looked towards the door. The door was ajar, he couldn't see outside, and there was no movement at all. He stood up and walked over, closing the door gently. Maybe it was blown open by the wind, he guessed. I returned to bed and fell asleep again, when suddenly there was another soft sound. Squeak. The door opened again. Garin sat up suddenly, unconsciously grabbing the table lamp beside the bed, and stared at the half-open door. Still can't see anything. Who's kidding me? He asked, raising his voice. Tali. The sound spread into the corridor outside the door, echoing in the empty space. No one answered. There was silence outside the door. Garin walked out of bed, put on his slippers, carefully carried the lamp to the door, closed the door gently, then locked it, hung up the chain, and bolted the door. Snapped. As the last bolt was inserted, the door was completely locked. Garin took a long breath and turned back to the bed. He didn't sleep, he just sat on the bed and listened vigilantly to the sounds and movements around him. Suddenly, there was a sound of fiddling with the keyhole coming from outside the door. Garin stood up suddenly, rushed to the door and opened it suddenly, and the sound suddenly stopped. There was nothing outside the door. Suddenly he was slightly startled. Didn't I lock the door? He looked back at the door latch and was suddenly startled. I obviously locked the door and inserted a few bolts. He clearly remembered that he just opened the door when he opened it. What's going on? What's going on? He slammed the door shut, backed up with numbness, his feet hit the bed, and he sat down on it. If I find out who is playing a prank on me, you will be dead, he shouted loudly. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 33. Kelly. Wake up. Kelly. Wake up. Suddenly, a rapid cry came from my ears. Garen opened his eyes suddenly, and a burst of dazzling light made him squint. The Mercury in the tower next to him was patting his face in confusion. What's wrong? What are you doing here in the tower? Garen sat up and realized that the scene just now was just a dream. Why did you come to the basement to sleep? Mercury in the tower looked at Garen strangely. Did someone come over last night to study, and when you were sleepy, you just turned to who was here? I didn't tell you not to act alone. Do you want to wait for me to come with you? Only then did Garen realize that he was actually lying in the basement, surrounded by narrow gray-black walls, empty of anything, and the floor and walls were covered with cold gray-black stone tiles. This basement is not entirely underground. Half of the skylights are on the upper part of the wall, shining bright sunlight. It looks more like a dungeon than a basement. What's going on? I remember that I was sleeping in my own bedroom. He lowered his head and felt a pain in his head. Suddenly, he felt a chill in his heart, and there was no sound around him. In just a blink of an eye, the Mercury in the tower in front of him disappeared. Surrounded by empty basement rooms. Tailai! Tailai! Garen got up from the ground and shouted several times. No one answered. Suddenly, his head hurt, and he suddenly remembered a memory, which he remembered vaguely. Tailai woke him up from the basement, which seemed to have been 3 days ago. 3 days ago, he covered his head, his eyes a little blurry. What's going on? If it was 3 days ago, then what on earth was I doing in the past 3 days? How come I don't have any memory? He was standing in front of me just now. He felt a sharp pain in his temples. My mind is a little confused. No. We can't stay in this castle any longer. He hurriedly opened the door, rushed out of the basement, and ran along the empty and straight corridor towards the castle gate. The thumping of footsteps continued to echo in the castle. Bang! The castle door was blasted open. Galen rolled out of the door, rolled down the stone steps, rolled several times on the lawn, and finally lay on his back on the grass. Huh! 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 He panted heavily, and a sudden wave of intense sleepiness came over him inexplicably, and Garen fell into a deep sleep without any resistance. I don't know how long it took, but he slowly opened his eyes again. He was still lying on the bed in the bedroom in the castle. Kelly, are you awake? Mercury's voice came from outside the door. Come back again. Was this all a dream just now? Garen was startled and sat up. This place is so weird. He had goosebumps all over his body. The warm sunshine shone on him from the window, but he didn't feel any warmth at all. But recalling the scene just now, the scene now feels much clearer. Is this a dream? He took a deep breath. After getting up, he quickly put on his clothes. He opened the door and saw Tailai Mercury standing at the door, looking at him in surprise. What's wrong with you? There are dark circles under your eyes, and you look like you haven't slept well. It's nothing, I just had a nightmare. Garen forced a smile. Nightmare? Tailai Mercury laughed. A nightmare scares you like this? What's going on? Come over and have morning tea and tell us about it? Okay. Garen rubbed his eyebrows, feeling a little ridiculous. It's just that this nightmare is not an ordinary reality. You go ahead. I'll lock the doors and windows in the lobby on the first floor below. Tailai Mercury patted Galen on the shoulder. It seems I shouldn't give you that information. It's okay, I'm not someone who gets scared easily. Garen laughed dumbly, left the room and walked downstairs. He didn't see Tali Mercury standing behind him with a slightly depressed expression. Lobby. Going down the middle staircase, Garen saw Miss Sillin sitting in the corner, holding a cup of hot black tea and drinking it slowly. She had also changed into a dark brown tight-fitting hunting suit, with her long pale blonde hair tied into a bunch hanging down her back. It brings out the fair and delicate skin color more and more. Mr. Kelly is up too? Why does he look not in good spirits? Is he not resting? I had a nightmare, it doesn't feel too real. Garen rubbed his brows, walked to the table next to Sillin and sat down. Let's drink tea. The newly brewed black tea is the tea I brought from Gelfide. Sillin made a gesture of invitation. Thank you. Galen picked up a cup of slightly hot black tea, put it to his nose and smelled it. Suddenly, a freshness like mint came to him, mixed with a touch of cream and sweetness. I took a sip and felt like I was drinking mint water. What kind of tea is this? It tastes weird. I added other spices to refresh the mind and help wake up the brain in the morning. One of my uncles is a professor of medicine at Sirius University, and this is the method he taught me. Sillin smiled. Not bad, not bad. Garen nodded, I do feel much clearer. Tali Mercury also walked to the table and sat down. He picked up the prepared mahogany cup and took a deep sip of the tea in it. This is my plan for a while. I will go hunting first, prepare food for noon and afternoon, and then go get water and wash the dishes. I will spend the afternoon checking the castle and the surrounding environment. You are much more experienced than me. It all depends on your arrangements. I have no objection. Garen shrugged. By the way, Mr. Kelly. Just call me Kelly. Well, Kelly, you just said that you had a very realistic nightmare. What kind of dream can make you like this? It seems that you are mentally weak and depressed. Tali Mercury asked doubtfully. Garen took a sip of the hot tea. The coolness of the mint and the heat of the hot water mixed together, sliding down his throat and into his stomach. He felt warm and awake all over his body. I dreamed, he paused, that someone kept opening my door in the middle of the night, again and again. Every time it was when I was about to fall asleep. He frowned. This is very weird. I have never been here, never been to this castle. I didn't expect that I would have such a nightmare when I came here. I remember that the information I gave you recorded the death information of the 3 previous owners here. They were said to have had nightmares before their death. It's possible that you felt a little worried after reading the information. To have such a strange dream, Tali Mercury analyzed. Are there any records of the specific circumstances of their nightmares? Galankai asked. That's not true, but I also had a dream yesterday, but it wasn't a nightmare. Tali Mercury held his cane and looked up at the skylight, with a trace of nostalgia and confusion on his face. Have you remembered that thing again? A trace of worry flashed in Sillin's eyes. It's been so long, haven't you let it go yet? If only it were that simple. Tali Mercury smiled, but there was a bit of bitterness in the smile. Garen sat aside, glanced at the two people's expressions, and said nothing. After slowly drinking their morning tea and eating some pastries brought by Sillin, the 3 of them stood up and picked up their shotguns and knives. Mercury in Tali held a shotgun, changed into dark green clothes similar to military uniforms specially designed for hunting, and wore a cylindrical hat. Galen was carrying a half-meter-long machete, but his clothes were still the same as yesterday, so he didn't look like he was hunting. It's not as simple as Miss Sillin's outfit. In the end, I just picked up a linen bag and started doing the logistics. The 3 simply packed up the tableware and walked out of the castle gate one after another. The door slammed shut and locked. Tali Mercury took the lead and walked towards the right side of the castle. There is a big hole in the fence there, and you can go directly to the woods from there. As he walked, he began to load the shotgun, sliding it up and down from time to time, making a clicking sound. There are not many animals around here, but fortunately there are not many of us. As long as we catch something, we can eat several meals. Garin nodded, said nothing, and just raised the pocket in his hand, which meant that he was just doing logistics to help get things, and the rest is up to you. Tali Mercury smiled, patted the shotgun confidently, and stopped talking. The three of them came to the right side of the castle. There was a large hole in the black iron fence that was 2 people wide and 1 person high. The metal railing of the fence seemed to have been smashed by something, bending and breaking inwards. Mercury in the tower carefully got out of the big hole first and stood on the other side waving to the 2 of them. Scylla was the second to get through the hole, moving swiftly. Garin followed quickly and ducked in, but a corner of his clothes almost got caught on the broken metal railing. Outside the fence is a deep, dark green forest, with densely packed small trees 4 to 5 meters high, some thick and thin, plus dense ground shrubs and grass. You can feel a coolness coming from the depths of the forest before you even walk in. The newly rising sunlight failed to penetrate the woods at all, and even the warmth of the light was blocked out. Waves of crisp bird calls continued to come from the depths, and occasionally there was the rustle of the grass, as if something was scurrying through the grass quickly. This is the movement of mountain rats. They are big and fat, Tali Mercury whispered, bending down and walking as softly as possible. I didn't expect to encounter something good just after I came out. Scylla smiled and began to move slowly behind him. Although Garin had never hunted before, he knew that there must be no loud noise at this time. He stood on tiptoes and followed at the back. Boom! Suddenly there was a gunshot in front of him. He looked up and saw Tali Mercury lowering his gun. White smoke was coming from the barrel of the gun, and a strong smell of gunpowder filled the air. Hey, I'm hit. Tali Mercury rubbed his nose, strode forward, walked to a bush more than 10 meters away, pushed aside the grass, rummaged inside, and directly took out a bush. Football-sized black and gray mountain rat. It's actually so big, Garin said in surprise, and followed up to look at the mountain rat. It looked like an enlarged version of the rat, except that the head was shot to pieces, and the fur on its back was splashed with tiny particles. Blood spots. Your shooting skills in the tower are really good. You can see the mountain rat running so fast through the grass so far away. He gave a thumbs up to Mercury in the tower, and Garin patted the mountain rat's fur. It seems like just this one is enough meat for the 3 of us today. This is not enough. If you have to remove the internal organs and fur, there won't be much meat left. You have to beat more. Tali Mercury shook his head and smiled. Garin had never handled wild game by himself, so he didn't understand anything, but everything felt quite new. The gloomy mood caused by the nightmare last night suddenly relaxed a lot. The 3 of them continued to wander in the forest, with Garin following at the end. The mountain rat was placed in his pocket. It was a bit heavy, weighing almost 20 pounds, which was close to 20 kilograms in weight. Following Miss Scylla, Garin checked his body attributes. The attributes haven't changed much, but the strength has increased a bit. The change from the original 2.08 to the current 2.09 is obviously the result of Dachin's Bioun secret technique. Many people know the growth rate of the 3rd level Bioun secret technique, but for this 4th level secret technique that no one has ever achieved, no one knows what level it can reach. Now the martial arts is on the right track, it's just the absorption of potential. It has begun to stagnate again. If we can figure out the source of the potential of the doomed antiques, we can search in a clear direction instead of running around like headless flies like now. Garin followed closely behind the 2 people in front while checking his physical condition. During this period of time, in the process of sparring with his senior brothers and sisters, he had gradually acquired the temperament of a martial arts practitioner. This is a change that slowly occurs from deep within, a change that occurs naturally due to changes in one's own strength. After wandering around for a while, the 3 of them failed to encounter any other prey. Tali Mercury turned around and said loudly, "There is a castle cellar ahead." Do you want to take a look? This is already nearby. We can go there to rest. The sound of gunfire just now probably scared the surrounding animals. Anyway, there is nothing to hunt around now. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 34. Seller? Okay. You can arrange it? The few people wandered around in the forest for a while, and Tali Mercury seemed to find the big tree mark that he had memorized before. After looking for several road signs in succession, they finally came to a slightly wider forest and grassland. This is it. I had a picnic here last time I came here. Tali Mercury walked onto the grass with a smile and stepped on the ground in the middle with his feet. Suddenly his expression changed. No. Someone else has been here. Scylla. Miss Scylla hurried forward, bent down, and started groping on the ground, and soon found a metal ring and lifted it up. The ring was black and red, covered with rust, and it seemed to be another metal inside, with a faint hint of smooth white and silver. Mercury in the tower was also looking for it, but he was not as fast as Scylla. When he saw the ring, he came over and grabbed the ring and pulled it up hard. Wow! A square wooden board was pulled up, and large pieces of dirt and grass clippings fell down, revealing a dark hollow below. Garin didn't ask how Mercury in the tower knew someone was here again. He just saw that the faces of the two people suddenly became serious, and he felt that the atmosphere was a little tense. He also walked over, stood at the entrance of the cave and looked in. It was dark inside and he didn't know how deep it was. I'll go down and take a look. Surprisingly, it was Miss Scylla who took the initiative to speak, not Detective Tali Mercury. Be safe, the detective actually agreed, nodding towards Miss Scylla with a solemn expression. It's better for me to go down. It's not good for Miss Scylla to go down for something like this, Garin said hesitantly. It's nothing. Scylla is not the pretty lady she appears to be. Just look carefully, the detective said calmly. Scylla pulled a white scarf from nowhere, covered her mouth and nose, held a short black dagger in her hand, took out a rope and tied it to a nearby tree, then threw the other end of the rope into the black hole. I'm going down first, please stay safe up there. The traces are still fresh, maybe the other party hasn't gone far yet, Scylla said in a deep voice. I know, be careful. The detective pulled Garin back 2 steps, his expression becoming more serious. Scylla pulled the rope and jumped towards the entrance of the cave. She disappeared instantly, and the dark brown rope was stretched tightly. After more than 10 seconds, the rope relaxed, and it was obvious that Miss Scylla inside had reached the bottom. Sir! Please come down here, there's something going on down there, Scylla's voice came from the cave. Tali Mercury's expression became more solemn. Scylla said that if there is a situation, it must be serious. I have to go down there myself. Mr. Kelly, I'll leave it to you. I'll leave this gun to you. Please don't leave the vicinity of the cave entrance. Garin was slightly shocked. He didn't know why Tali Mercury trusted him so much, but after thinking about it carefully, he still had some plans for this great detective, so naturally he couldn't have any other crooked thoughts. He immediately nodded solemnly. Don't worry, I will stay close by every step of the way. Please, Tali Mercury nodded, handed the shotgun to Garin, then arranged his things, tightened his belt, and slowly slid down the hole while holding the rope with both hands. Within 10 seconds, he was completely invisible. Garin stood alone at the edge of the cave, holding a double-barreled shotgun and paying careful attention to the surroundings. But fortunately, there was no movement around, only the slight rustling of leaves in the wind. Not long after, Scylla climbed up along the rope, her face gray and a little tired. 2 bodies were found down there, both of them were in a state of decomposition. Corpse, Garin deliberately made a frightened look and swallowed his saliva. Miss Scylla, are you kidding? He killed 2 people directly or indirectly, one after another. During this time, he understood the inner workings of the core of the section. Due to the situation, his mind was more calm and condensed, and there was no way he could be moved by two dead people or anything like that. No kidding, it is indeed the bodies of two men. Scylla sat on the grass, put the dagger upside down, and took out a white handkerchief with a light red palm print clearly printed on it. What's this? The bloody handprint of the murderer is an important clue. Scylla carefully folded the bloody handprint and put it in a small pocket. Besides, these are the things in the cellar, sir, I can't identify them. Scylla took out a few more small black things in her hand. The surface was covered with grey and black mud. The gentleman said it might be an antique. He had to check the scene down below and asked me to bring it up to you first. Oh, Garin took it carefully and slowly peeled off the mud on the surface of these gadgets. Soon, 4 small objects were neatly placed on the grass. They are 4 small rusty black iron pieces, all rectangular and as long as a finger knuckle. The 4 iron pieces are a bit thick, and there seems to be some vague writing on the surface, which is not very clear. How is it? Scylla asked, sitting aside. It's an antique. It's really useful to me. Very useful. Garin's face twitched and he quickly returned to his normal expression. Sir, he said that if you like it, he will give it to you. It will be a shock to you this time. Garin's face was heavy and he gently touched an iron piece in the middle. Feeling the potential filaments flowing into his body slowly like a metal, he immediately shook his head after hearing this. I don't believe that tale. I can't see the value of these pieces of iron. This gift is a bit big, but I have to accept it. The piece of iron in the middle contains a huge potential aura like the ocean, which is much greater than the original potential aura of the metal. Garin couldn't let go of it when he held it in his hand. He glanced at Scylla on one side. This young and beautiful woman was looking at him with a half-smile, and her face suddenly became hot. There is no way he would give up this piece of iron. If he could absorb all the potential within it, he would definitely be able to gain nearly 10 points of attributes, and it might also be an antique like a metal that continuously provides potential over a long period of time. He had a vague premonition of this. This gift is not an ordinary gift. He held the piece of iron tightly, like holding an ice cube. A steady stream of cold air poured into his hands without any feeling of being frozen. It's just that the absorption rate is too slow. You can't even think of absorbing it completely within a few months. Garin glanced at Scylla and narrowed his eyes slightly. I have a check for 1 million here. He took out a white bank draft from his inner pocket, neatly folded it and placed it next to the iron plate. If I'm not mistaken, this iron plate should be the black jade plate mentioned in the tower before. Another black jade plate not long ago was auctioned in the Weisman Empire for a high price of more than 6 million, so no matter what, this time I took advantage. He was silent for a moment, seeming to be thinking about something and hesitating a little. I made a note of it this time, so I owe Talai a favor. He said it very solemnly, word for word. In his previous life, Garin was an extremely committed person. He never made promises easily, but once he said it, he would definitely honor it. This iron plate is like a huge treasure. It brings him not only wealth, but also a real improvement in his own strength. As long as he is kept by his side, his comprehensive attributes will change dramatically after a period of time. It is probably not a big problem to catch up with his senior brothers and sisters. It is possible to even surpass his master Fabian and reach a limit in a very short time. Mr. Talai knows that you know the goods, and he just needs you to do him a favor. Your favor will be repaid immediately. Scylla seemed to have expected this reaction from Garin, and said softly with a smile. What are you doing? Just say it. I will definitely do whatever I can do. Garin's eyes narrowed slightly, knowing that Mercury in the tower might have seen his disguise. Block the Jin Huan who is about to chase him. Scylla's eyes darkened and she whispered, as long as you block it for half an hour, the helpers we have notified will arrive quickly. Of course, it would be best if we can kill him. Golden Ring. Garin suddenly turned his head and looked far to the right. In the grass, a man with a dark green body, his face covered and a black turban was slowly walking over. A gold earring was quietly worn on his right ear. "Last time it was you who chased me, this time it's my turn to chase you." The man's voice was hoarse, giving people a noisy and harsh feeling. At this time, Mercury in the tower emerged from the black hole, climbed up the rope, panting, and glanced at the golden ring that came over. "It's up to you, Kelly." He patted Garen on the shoulder, winked at Scylla, and the two quickly stood up and ran towards the castle without looking back. And the man didn't even chase him. The two ran a long distance in one breath. The woods and grass around them kept moving back, and soon the black fence of the castle could be seen in front of them. "Sir, can that Kelly really block the golden ring?" "Hoo-hoo. I just want him to delay for a while. I didn't expect him to block the golden ring." Tali Mercury gasped, "The black jade plate I left him is for life. According to the golden ring rules, Kelly's life is not in danger." "It seems that you have thought it through, Sir." Scylla was just panting slightly and seemed to be in good physical strength. "Let's go, hurry up, Jin Huan will catch up again soon." Tali Mercury got in along the big hole in the fence. In the woods, Garen put the black jade plate in his hands and stood up slowly. A series of explosions rang out from all his bones, like firecrackers. "I owe a favor to the tower. I'll pay you back by beating you to death. Don't blame me. If you want to blame you. My life is not good." His body slowly expanded like a balloon, and his height of 1.7 meters actually grew to over 1.9 meters tall. A violent aura spread quickly. The skin of the muscles quickly changed from fair to slightly black like leather. Jin Huan's complexion suddenly changed. He was overwhelmed by the strong momentum and involuntarily took 2 steps back. "Who the hell are you?" Garen didn't reply. He stretched out his arm and grabbed him violently. He actually jumped over a distance of several meters. The terrifying arms covered with veins and knotted muscles suddenly pinched Jin Huan's head like a giant python. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 35. With this sudden and violent attack, Garen's arm immediately grabbed the top of Jin Huan's head and pressed down hard like a giant claw of a beast, as if he wanted to completely scratch the entire head. This move is a punch in Baiun's martial art. The punch and any movement can achieve instant acceleration and sudden attack. Garen has never used Baiun fighting technique in actual combat, and today is the first time. Baiun's martial arts emphasizes momentum. Every move, word, and deed must create an atmosphere of being crushed by a giant elephant. When the palm of his hand was about to catch Jin Huan's forehead, a dagger suddenly appeared on Jin Huan's hand, and he stabbed upward, with the tip of the knife pointing at the pressed wrist. This movement was quick and fast, and the tip of the dagger accelerated instantly, as if using some special force-generating technique. Snapped. Garen used the side of his palm to avoid the tip of the knife, and slapped it from the side, hitting Jin Huan's wrist. The dagger flew away with a scoff and disappeared into the grass. Jin Huan also took advantage of the situation and flew back a few steps, again opening the distance between the two. "Do you think you can win with great strength?" "Stupid." Jin Huan swiped his right hand from his lower back, and immediately took out 4 small black flying knives between his fingers and raised them casually. Tisk tisk tisk. 4 flying knives flew out like lightning and nailed Garen's chest accurately. Garen didn't react in time at all. He crossed his arms to block, but he didn't catch it. When he raised his arms, the flying knife had already pierced his clothes. It's just that the flying knife only pierced the clothes and nailed the skin, not even the epidermis. He casually pulled off a flying knife and threw it in the direction of the golden ring. With a violent spinning sound, the flying knife turned into a round wheel and shot towards the golden ring, but he easily dodged it. Garen threw out the other 3 flying knives one after another, but Jin Huan easily dodged them. He also took the opportunity to pick up the double-barreled shotgun from the ground. Boom! A puff of white smoke came out of the muzzle of the shotgun, and the bullet hit the tree trunk, blasting a black crater. Some leaves and bark were shaken off, falling like raindrops. The golden ring is extremely fast, and it quickly dodges as soon as Garlean's movement starts to show up, making it impossible to aim. After hiding a few times, he seemed to realize that Garen's reaction speed was not as fast as his, and a sneer suddenly appeared in his eyes. The surprise and suspicion caused by the change in Garen's body shape suddenly faded a lot. "Didn't you just say you were going to beat me to death? Do you have the ability?" "Go to hell," Garen roared violently, raised his double-barreled shotgun and used it as an iron bar to hit him hard. The shotgun made a harsh whistling sound in mid-air due to the huge force. But it still came to nothing. The golden ring turned to the right and was easily avoided. "What's the use of having all your strength? If you can't hit someone, it's all in vain." Jin Huan looked sarcastic, and he got close to him instantly. There was an extra dagger in his hand, and he flipped the sword and stabbed Galen's wrist. From bottom to top, the assassination speed was extremely fast, just at the moment when Garen's excessive movement range created a gap. "It's over." Jin Huan's eyes flashed with a trace of cruelty. At this moment, Garen narrowed his eyes, threw his right arm back fiercely, and his shadow flashed. The previously slow speed suddenly changed, and his right arm was drawn out like an elephant trunk lightning, hitting Jin Huan's left arm. Different from the slow speed just now, when he swung his right arm this time, he could only see the flicker of a whip. The speed is almost doubled. Jin Huan's eyes widened. The dagger he had just stabbed was halfway out when he felt a click in his right arm, and a sharp pain hit him instantly. His body suddenly became light and he flew out to the right involuntarily. Bang! The golden ring crashed into the bushes, and after a loud splashing sound, a bush path was opened directly, and a large number of plants and grass were completely crushed and smashed. It flew a full 7 or 8 meters before stopping and rolling down beside a large white rock. Garen stood there and did not pursue him. His whole body slowly returned to its original state, and he shook his right arm with a relaxed smile on his face. "Do you really think I'm very slow? Although I'm not as fast as you, I'm not that slow. I first deliberately said that I wanted to beat you to death, and then I acted like a clumsy, stupid guy. That's right. It's because you took the initiative to stay and fight with me, making you think that you can easily and quickly deal with me, and it doesn't take much time, but you can also just breathe a sigh of relief from my displeasure. It's a pity." He walked over slowly and saw Jin Huan trying to prop up his body on the ground, but he couldn't help but fell down again. Not only his right arm, but also his left arm was obviously twisted unnaturally during the rolling process. It was also broken. "If you don't care about me at all and just go after the Mercury and the two in the tower, I'm not as fast as you and there's really nothing I can do to stop you. But fortunately, you actually stayed after being provoked by me." Garen was in actual combat for the first time. He used the fighting strategies taught by Fei Baiyun and achieved miraculous results, and he felt a sense of comfort in his heart. Jin Huan's face was livid, and blood slowly overflowed from his body. It was obviously scratched somewhere during the rolling process. "You were hit by me 4 times, but you didn't have any injuries. But don't be complacent. Someone will avenge me." As soon as he finished speaking, purple blood suddenly overflowed from the corner of his mouth, his head tilted, his eyes widened and he immediately ran out of breath. Garen narrowed his eyes and quickly squatted down and pressed Jin Huan's chest. Although his body was hot, his heartbeat had stopped. "Dead? The famous golden ring thief wouldn't be so easily tricked to death by me, would he?" He suddenly felt that this matter was a bit too simple. The golden ring thief and Tailai Mercury have been battling wits and strength for so many years. If they had been solved so easily, they would have disappeared long ago, and it would not be his turn to take action. Garen stood up with a roar and looked around. The woods were quiet except for the rustle of leaves in the breeze. He squatted down again and began to carefully examine the items and clothes on Jin Huan's body. Except for some scattered banknotes and a small throwing knife, this man had nothing on him. Looking at the scarf covering Jin Huan's face, Garen frowned and gently removed the scarf, and was slightly startled. Under the scarf, there is a face that was half burned by fire. There is a black scar with the number 102 printed on the right side of the cheek. It looked like it was ironed on with something. 102. It seems that this golden ring is not a person, but a group. Garen suddenly felt a little troubled, so, there might be someone else chasing Tali, Mercury and Scylla. This person is just on the surface. Pretense. He stood up, looked around cautiously, and quickly ran towards the castle. This golden ring is just an ordinary person who knows some fighting skills. Most people can easily disguise it with a little training. They just have some explosive speed power skills. The real golden ring cannot be that simple. Recalling the number 102 on that man's face, Garen felt a little heavy in his heart. If that number represents a ranking or number, it means that the Golden Circle is an organization with at least hundreds of people. So why would such a large organization specialize in stealing antiques? Is it just for the huge value of the antiques? Or is there something else? What other purpose? From the fact that Mercury casually gave him the black jade plate in the tower, it can be seen that he probably didn't know what this meant to Garen. He probably just saw through Garen's skill and his fondness for antiques. The extremely valuable Doom antique such as the black jade plate is an irresistible temptation for such collectors. But that was Kelly, the collector in disguise, and the real pretender, Galen, was actually just a student in high school. The thought of having to face a vicious organization like the Golden Circle alone that kills people and sets fires makes Garen still feel a little uneasy even though he has been practicing martial arts for so long. Although he had lived for decades in his previous life and was not a real teenage high school student, he had lived in an environment with sound laws and stable society for those decades. I ran back quickly, and soon I saw the hole in the castle fence in front of me. Garen quickly got in, turned a corner and ran towards the main entrance of the castle. Suddenly he seemed to catch a glimpse of something flashing on the right side of his body. He stopped for an instant and looked in the direction of the bright light, just in time to vaguely see a black telescope in the distance slowly retracting into the trees. The reflection just now was the light from the sun shining on the telescope lens. There are actually people still monitoring me, which means that every move I make has been seen by others. Galen was shocked. No wonder number 102 just said that someone would avenge him. Now we are in trouble. He originally thought that if he killed the man in the woods and no one was around to see him, he would not be noticed by the other organization. Now it seems that this idea is a bit naive. It's better to find Tali, Mercury and the others first. Being targeted by the other party without knowing the situation clearly is asking for death. Go around the side of the castle and walk to the main entrance. The castle door was ajar, and it was extremely quiet inside. There was no sound from Miss Mercury and Scylla in the tower at all. Garen quickly walked into the door. In the castle hall, the brown coffee wooden table that had been set up had been overturned to the ground, and the glass pot of black tea was scattered on the floor. You can faintly see messy footprints on the surrounding ground, as if many people were passing by in a hurry. Garen briefly glanced at the footprints. Most of them were moist black footprints mixed with fine green moss. Someone has been here, there must be more than one. He walked lightly, slowly went up to the second floor, and slowly patrolled the corridor. The walls and floors of the castle were covered in ashes that had been burnt by fire. It was a mixture of white ashes mixed with black, like black and white paint that had not been stirred evenly. On the corridor wall, there are still black remains of half-burned oil paintings in some places. Walking in the direction of Mercury's bedroom in the tower, Garen tried to breathe as gently as possible and listened carefully to the movements in the castle. He seemed to be the only one in the entire castle, silent, with a hint of deathly silence and depression in the air. He quickly walked to the door of Mercury's bedroom in the tower. The iron door was ajar. Garin pushed it open gently and slipped in through the gap without making any big noise. There was a large white bed, a single sofa, and a large rectangular box in the room. Thick curtains covered most of the window, leaving only a small half to let in a beam of light. As a result, most of the entire bedroom was still hidden in the shadows, making the whole room seem a little dark. The box was placed at the end of the bed, and a kerosene lamp placed on it was still on. The dim light illuminated the shadows covered by the curtains. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 36. Garin walked into the room gently. He felt vaguely uncomfortable and the air was a little depressing. This room is too quiet. He couldn't hear any sound in his ears. The sound insulation effect of the windows seemed to be very good. The birds chirping outside and the wind sound could not be transmitted in. The whole room was depressingly quiet. It was as if there were people resting here a moment ago, and the next moment it was empty. Garin slowly walked to the big box at the end of the bed, and suddenly felt a little curious about the big box of mercury in the tower. Didn't you say that you didn't carry enough kerosene? Are you still lighting a lamp in broad daylight? He reached for the kerosene lamp. Squeak. There was a sudden sound from the door behind him. Galen was suddenly startled. He turned around and saw that the door had closed by itself, and he didn't know when it had been locked. He took a few steps over and turned the door handle. There was only a clicking sound, but it couldn't be opened at all. I could faintly hear the footsteps of someone running away in the corridor outside the door. Garin's face darkened. There is indeed something strange here. Suddenly he recalled the information that Mercury showed him in the tower. The information at the end contained key analysis annotated by the detective himself. In the mystery of the deaths of the three owners of Yinshaw Castle, the victims all have one thing in common, that is, they all wear a bronze cross medal passed down from their ancestors. This medal was once said to be a second-level military medal awarded for military merit during the war. But in fact, according to my research, the owner of the castle had received this medal as early as 200 years ago, so it is absolutely impossible. Later wars awarded things. Thinking of this, Garin quickly pulled out a black thread from his neck. Hanging on the thread was a purple-red medal with a P letter in the center, which was the bronze cross he carried close to his body. At this time, the color of this medal actually looked a bit delicate, as if it were newly plated, and it didn't have the shabby feel of age at all. Sure enough, this is the problem. Garin looked gloomy, glanced around the entire bedroom, ripped off the medal, put it directly on the lid of the box, and then rushed to the window in a few steps. Wow! He smashed the window with one punch. Suddenly, the entire bedroom seemed to have escaped from a silent movie, as if Shizen suddenly turned on the sound and suddenly came alive. Garin felt a weird feeling in his heart, as if some danger was approaching quickly, and subconsciously he didn't want to leave from the door. He stood at the window and looked down. This was the second floor, more than 10 meters away from the lawn on the ground. I have to find sheets to use as ropes, the height is a bit high. Just as he was about to turn around, he suddenly felt someone push him hard from behind. The power is so great that he is actually stronger than he is now. Involuntarily, Garin was pushed out of the window. "Who?" he yelled, his mind went blank, and his whole body became extremely tense. "We." There was faint laughter from behind. Boom. Garin threw himself on the lawn with his arms propped up. Fortunately, his physical fitness and strength were too strong. The arms were slightly dislocated just because of the wrong posture for exerting force. He quickly stood up and looked back at the bedroom on the second floor. The curtains there were fluttering in the wind, and there was no trace of anyone at all. Looking at the castle gate again, the gate is locked. The gate that was clearly ajar just now was actually locked from behind. Garin endured the pain of his dislocated arm, took a deep look at the castle, quickly turned around and ran away. After leaving the castle fence, Garin didn't stop at all. He returned directly along the mountain path and ran quickly to the town of Konu. I was pushed downstairs just now. If I were a normal person, I would definitely be thrown to death. In that position, with my head down, my neck would be broken. If I hadn't been a person who specializes in martial arts, just like that, even if you don't die, you will be crippled. Garin is still frightened. Fortunately, he didn't go to the room on the third floor to check. If he fell from the third floor. Recalling the previous 3 terms of ownership of the castle, there are records of servants falling from windows and dying while cleaning rooms. And not just together. I used to think it was an accident and there was something wrong with the castle design. But now it seems that someone was definitely pushing me down just like me just now. Garin was convinced because the servants who fell to their deaths always hit the ground head first. It's exactly the same as being pushed down. The dislocation of his arm became more and more painful. Garin rolled up his sleeve and took a look. There was already a big red swelling. We have to go to the town quickly to find someone to set the bones. His pace became faster and faster. Snapped. Garin's upper body was naked, and his left arm was swollen like a red bun. At this time, he was sitting in the doorway where he and Tali Mercury had tea together. A doctor in a grey suit was sitting on the side, grabbing his left arm and slapping him hard with one hand. Garin suddenly gasped and sweated all over from the pain. However, there was also a crunching sound from the bones. Okay, we're in position. Thank you, Dr. Ashgallan nodded, endured the pain with his newly reattached right arm, took out a stack of banknotes, and placed it on the table. This is the medical fee. Okay, Dr. Ash is a veteran private doctor who often treats everyone in the town. Apart from not having formal medical qualifications, the bone setting technique is quite authentic. After all, in a small town like this, the main injuries are minor illnesses like this. As soon as Galen returned to the town, he immediately paid the townspeople for help and called Dr. Ashe over, and finally solved the problem of dislocated arms. I'll prescribe some medicine for you. You can rub a little of it on the injured area according to the above ratio every day, and you'll recover quickly. Dr. Ashe put away the consultation fee and said with a smile, "It's rare to meet a big client. I took it for $1,000. You deserve this. After all, you were woken up by me when you were taking a nap. The extra money should be regarded as hard work." Garin nodded nonchalantly. "Then I'll trouble you." "No trouble, no trouble." He dug out a milky white glass vial from the small white medicine box he carried with him, read the label on it, and placed the vial on the table. "Just apply this ointment every day, remember not to use too much force, and there will be no other problems. Then I'll leave first." Garin nodded. "Thank you." Gon and Essie left with the medical kit on their backs and disappeared into the bushes along a trail. Garin sat at the table, gently picked up the wooden cup and drank the coffee in one gulp. "Boss, have another drink," he turned and shouted into the small building. "Okay." A fat middle-aged man with a black beard came out, carrying a glass coffee pot, and carefully refilled Galen with a cup of coffee. At this time, 2 more strong farmers carrying hoes came in and sat down at a table in the doorway. 2 beers. The boss quickly went into the house and brought out the beer. Garin sat on his seat, feeling the constant cold breath of the black jade plate he had just received. For a moment, the pain in his arm seemed to slowly ease. When he was practicing martial arts in the martial arts gym, he would spar with his senior brothers and sisters every day, and he would often dislocate his arm, so he could endure it without much hardship, and it would not affect his normal activities too much. Sitting in a small restaurant in the town, he had the energy to rethink the movement of Mercury in the tower. Leaving aside the weirdness of the castle, someone like Tali Mercury would actually put aside the case and live in a small castle in the countryside for such a long time. It's abnormal no matter how you think about it. Garen took a sip of his coffee. But to put it another way, a person with a golden ring appears near the castle, and what if the target of the person with a golden ring is the Yinsha castle? What if the Mercury in the tower is not going towards the castle, but towards the golden ring? Then there will be a clue to all this. Jinhuan's target is Yinsha castle, and Mercury in the tower was tracking down the case. It just so happened that I came over at this time. As a person of unknown origin, I was finally faced with Jinhuan's people, just in time to test who I was. It's not an undercover agent sent by Jinhuan. There should be more to it, but the main story should be correct. So, where is the Mercury in the tower now? Garen subconsciously wanted to rub the center of his brow, but he couldn't raise his arm. A burst of pain came from him, which made him laugh bitterly. As the afternoon approached, the sun turned red, and the business in the doorway got better and better. There were more and more people, and the boss had no choice but to bring out a few more tables and chairs. The entire doorway was noisy, with farmers and townspeople shouting and drinking and eating together. Garen moved his position and sat alone in the corner. Different from the noisy behavior of others, he sat in a chair and drank coffee quietly. "Boss, please ask me something." When the boss passed by him, Garen quickly stopped him. "What's the matter?" Guess the fat boss stopped quickly, but he remembered that Mr. Kelly had tea here with the previous gentleman with extraordinary temperament. A guest with this kind of temperament is not something ordinary townspeople can match. So his posture also seemed cautious. "I would like to ask, has the gentleman who had tea with me yesterday come back to town?" Garen asked in a low voice. He just asked casually. With Tali Mercury's detective experience, if he really wanted to hide it, it would be impossible for him to be discovered by such a small boss. I'm back." "I had tea here today," the fat boss replied quickly. Unexpectedly, the boss reacted immediately and answered in the affirmative. "Come back." Garen was stunned. Did he say anything? "That's not true. I just ordered the same black tea that you drank yesterday." "The seat where you sit is also where you sit together," the boss quickly replied. "That's right." Garen nodded thoughtfully. Obviously this was the whereabouts Tali Mercury deliberately left for him. But now he is not going to look for him again. It seems that it's a bit of a disadvantage to work together with this great detective for no reason. We still have to separately. If what Tali said is true, he is also tracking down the antiques of doom and the secrets contained in them. Then I can do it too. It just happened to follow his path. Anyway, it is difficult to find the antique of misfortune according to the normal path. If my guess is true, and Jinhuan seems to be looking for something in this area, it just so happens that they can help find the antique of misfortune. I will just find the right opportunity to exchange it with them. Garen initially made plans for the future. Although this time was dangerous, it also gave him a taste of the sweetness. Got a black jade plate. Although a bronze cross was lost, it was naturally more precious than the black jade plate that had not yet been absorbed. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 37. When we returned to the city from Konu town, it was already past 8 o'clock in the evening. Garen went home directly, washed up, and fell asleep. My parents are not at home, probably going out to attend a work party again. My sister Yinger was sitting on the sofa reading a book. When she saw him coming back, she deliberately raised the book to cover her face. She didn't know what she was doing. Galen's arms were dislocated, and although he had applied ointment, there was still some pain. In addition, the strange thing he encountered in the castle today made him physically and mentally exhausted, and he had no energy to pay attention. After resting at home for a week, the swelling in my arm subsided, but I still couldn't do 2 strenuous exercises, such as martial arts. Garen really couldn't stay at home anymore, and his sister was bored all day long and wouldn't talk to him. In this era, the world does not have computers, televisions, or anything else for people to entertain themselves. He simply took some change and went directly to the city library. "This is your loan card. Please keep it and don't let the number get worn off." The waitress at the lobby desk handed over a black square card with both hands, smiling. "Thank you." Garen took the card and looked at the number on it, 233. "Is this number based on the number of people?" "Yes, sir." The waitress nodded. "Please go left for general books. Please go right for unique ancient books and special foreign books." "Okay." Taking the card, Garen walked directly into the left passage. The black passage is a bit dark, and there are bright yellow wall lamps on the walls on both sides, making the entire passage look dim. When he walked into the passage, he saw two young girls walking in front of him, one behind the other. The floor is covered with thick black carpet, and you can barely hear your footsteps. There are too few people, mainly because the price is too expensive. A card costs 5,000 yuan, someone must introduce it, and you can only read it for a month. Most people who really want to read the book look down on it, and those who can afford it don't have the time or energy. Shaking his head slightly, Garen followed the person in front for a short distance, turned left, and suddenly entered a small, narrow room. The room was illuminated with pale yellow lights, and the surrounding walls could not be seen. They were all bookshelves, and the densely packed red books on them completely blocked the walls. There are also two single red sofas and a black wooden table filled with books. Standing at the door of the room and looking straight, you can see that there is a door on the opposite wall, leading to another similar room like this. Opposite that room is another door, connecting to the new room. These rooms are connected in a straight line like a skewer, door to door, all the way to the far corner. Guests entering can walk in a straight line through all rooms. The two girls in front of Garen did not stop, but continued walking forward. They stopped and stood still when they reached the third room. Garen withdrew his gaze and glanced left and right at the books on the walls on both sides. There were wooden signs with classifications hanging under the wall lamps on the walls. The books in this room are historical. He walked forward, through this, and into the next room. The second room is for geography. The third room is for dance, drama, and painting arts. The two girls are not pretty, but they are quite absorbed in reading while standing here with a book each. The fourth room is for mathematical chemistry and philosophy. The fifth room is for marriage, sex, and healthcare. In fact, it is a place where books such as are stored. The atmosphere of the Federation was influenced by the Weisman Empire and was particularly open. Although there were not many such books, they could still be published publicly. In this room, a young woman in her 30s sat on the sofa and watched with gusto. In the sixth room, as soon as Garen walked in, he saw a girl in a white dress and black stockings sitting on the sofa. She had long pale blonde hair hanging behind her with a white headband tied in the middle. She looked extremely ladylike. "Feinstein? Are you here today?" Garen was slightly startled, then smiled. He walked to the sofa next to the girl and sat down. What a coincidence! The girl raised her face, revealing a delicate and pure face. Her skin was very fair, with a slight crystal feel, and her eyes were large and clear. Her dark blue pupils looked at Garen coldly. She gives people the impression of a little sister who is pretending to be cold, which is completely different from the arrogant young lady who had a picnic on the river bank last time. This is the side of her life, the gentle side shown towards friends who recognize her. Feinstein sat on the large and soft sofa, her petite body almost sinking into the sofa, surrounded by red. A large red book was placed on her thigh skirt, covering most of her upper body. She looked very cute and charming. However, Garen also knew that this beautiful girl was a cold-faced and warm-hearted type and was not fooled by her appearance. You must know that his qualifications to enter this library were introduced to him by Feinstein, otherwise he might not be able to enter here. Because he didn't even know that such a library existed in the city before. Sitting in a more comfortable position, Garin took a red book on the table and flipped through it. There was a heraldry book on it, which contained information on the coats of arms of the Federation and famous families in the world. A more complete introduction. Although it's holiday now, why do you have time to come to Huaishan again? Feinstein lowered her head and continued reading. It's quiet enough here. It's not like a bunch of flies bothering me in Manroland. After she and Garin met again last time, they talked about the jewelry of bad luck. Because Galen has an unusual interest in antiques of doom, Feinstein, who has always liked special mysterious antique jewelry, became very interested in talking. Feinstein could tell that Garin was not the kind of person who deliberately approached her for other purposes, so she put down her guard. When talking about his favorite topic, mysterious antique jewelry, the other party showed an extremely serious attitude and acted like he was all ears. This made Feinstein feel very fond of Garin. The two of them spent 5 or 6 hours chatting in a small cafe before parting ways. After that time, Feinstein took the initiative to apply for Galen's qualification and borrowing card for this library. The two of them can be regarded as pure antique jewelry enthusiasts. You are quite tired, hiding everywhere. Garin smiled. By the way, didn't you say you found a new good thing last time? How is it going? Feinstein put down the book and frowned slightly, looking a little distressed. It was very difficult to get it. The other party refused to sell it no matter what. I raised the price twice, but it was still to no avail. It was obvious that he really didn't want to sell it. What is it? A lucky ship's bow from the Age of Discovery. It is said to be a bust of a mermaid that can bring good luck to people. Mermaid bust? How much did you pay? Garin asked, licking his lips. 250,000. For the mermaid bust's bow, 250,000 is indeed a bit low. But this is the maximum amount I can transfer recently. No more will be enough, and I don't have much pocket money. Feinstein's face showed a distressed look. Let's not talk about this for now. By the way, is there any news about the 2 pieces of jewelry I asked you to help me check last time? Garin changed the subject. That one is quite simple. Feinstein paused and recalled a little. Those 2 pieces of jewelry, one is Marceline's blue fantasy. It is said that a master jewelry processing named Marceline once made it for herself. An antique jewelry made by a lover. The master died of illness soon after making the jewelry. What is strange is that the lover who wore this jewelry was lucky and grew up from an ordinary person very quickly. As a new master of jewelry craftsmanship, he became extremely wealthy. This piece of jewelry was also placed in his jewelry store as a treasure. However, it was later stolen, and a series of imitations were made. If you run away, there is no way to find the real thing. Isn't this person dead? Garin was stunned. Feinstein rolled her eyes at him. Why should people die when they are living well? She just liked the relaxing feeling of chatting with Garin. In front of other people, they all valued her beauty, family background, and background. But in front of Garin, an ordinary boy of the same age, he didn't care at all about her appearance and background. What mattered most was her knowledge of antique jewelry, especially the knowledge of mysterious jewelry. He. I made a mistake. Garin smiled sheepishly. What about the other thing? Feinstein leaned back, grabbed a black string hanging in front of the wall, and pulled gently. Wait a minute, what do you want? Ego chili black tea, Garin said casually. Feinstein nodded. After a while, a girl wearing a black and white maid uniform walked into the room. What do you two need? A cup of Tonino coffee and a cup of Kuchinai black tea, both of which are hot, Feinstein ordered calmly. I understand, please wait a moment. The young maid bowed and left the room. Garin snickered on the side. Didn't you like cold things before? Why are you laughing? Can't you change the flavor occasionally? Feinstein's cheeks turned red and she became embarrassed. Do you think I'm following your example? Yes, yes, I know, Garin waved his hands repeatedly, holding back his smile. I understand. After saying this, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. Okay, be serious. Feinstein held up the book and hit Galen on the head. Although it looked heavy, the force was very light. Let's talk about another piece, which is also the jewel of this jeweler. It's called the Eyes of Avril. It was inspired by a princess named Avril from the Weisman Empire. It is said that she was born blind, but her eyes were born extremely perfect and beautiful. This piece of jewelry is named after her eyes. There is no mysterious background, but it is said that this piece of jewelry once received the blessing of Weisman III, who hoped that the princess's eyes would always be as beautiful and clear as this piece of jewelry. It was rumored that this piece of jewelry disappeared among the people and disappeared for many years, and I don't know if it is authentic. It should be true, Garin said softly, touching his chin. How do you know? Guess. Garin smiled and became serious. Okay, let's get down to business. Last time you said you found that the Ring of Doom you bought had new changes. What changes? Can you show me again? Feinstein pondered and remained silent for a while. Just then the maid came in with black tea and coffee, placed the coffee and black tea in front of the two of them, and then left quietly. The scalding heat slowly rose from the brown cup, and the room seemed unusually quiet for a while. After a long time, Feinstein slowly spoke. She frowned and rubbed her temples in distress. I can't explain clearly. Anyway, it's a very weird feeling. Nothing goes well during this period, pocket money is suddenly tightened, and my friends quarrel with me for no reason. She paused. You also know that I have few friends and a narrow circle. Ever since I bought the Ring of Doom, it has become like this. Do you think it's really that thing that works? Where is your Ring of Doom? Show it to me. Garin also frowned. Feinstein's face suddenly turned red. I didn't bring it with me. I'll bring it over next time and show it to you. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 38. Finney. Suddenly, a blond young man wearing a black windbreaker walked into the room. Why are you still here? Are you still studying your antique jewelry? Stop playing and go back quickly. I have to pack up quickly for the afternoon train. The young man glanced at Garin, who was sitting on the side, and saw the close relationship between him and Feinstein. Don't just study your jewelry and antiques all day long. Could you please do something serious? Felix, I can make the decision on my own affairs, I don't need you to point fingers at me, Feinstein replied rudely. Isn't studying antique jewelry a serious business? Doing what you want to do is a serious business. You, the young man's face turned red, you know how to talk back to me. You don't care about the family business or your own company, so you go to the countryside to study some jewelry and antiques. You can do it, you are promising. If you have the ability, don't go back today. If you don't go back, you won't go back, Feinstein snorted coldly, turning her eyes and not bothering to pay him any attention. You hang out with some guys who study jewelry and antiques all day long, and you don't even attend the clan banquet. I'll see what you do if you get into trouble in the future. The young man seemed to be angry, and his eyes turned and fell on Garin's head. I go to meet this friend now, and then I go see that friend again. Let me tell you, Feinstein, guys like them who only study antique jewelry will at best be jewelry appraisers in their lives. Hanging out with such people all day long, let's see what kind of person you can become in the future. I told you to speak with respect. Feinstein stood up unceremoniously. He is my friend. Huh, the young man snorted coldly. My father already knows that you don't do your job properly and spend all your time studying antique jewelry. He is very dissatisfied with you. I want to see how you explain it to your father. You don't have to worry about this. Don't think that because you are my brother, you can reprimand me without any scruples. You have no education at all. Galen sat aside and also frowned. This young man named Felix was Finestine's biological brother. His tone seemed dissatisfied with his sister's research on antiques. He didn't even have a good impression of him who was discussing antiques with Feinstein. Please lower your voice, a middle-aged maid wearing glasses walked in and whispered. This is a public place, a library, please be quiet. I'm sorry, the young man nodded and strode out of the room. Feinstein also smiled apologetically at the middle-aged woman. Sorry to make you laugh. The woman nodded, turned, and left the room with a serious face. Feinstein then sat back on the sofa, her face not very pretty. Garin sat aside and frowned. If you have anything to do, go back first. It's not important for us to chat. My brother was very rude, I apologize to you on his behalf. Feinstein felt helpless. It's nothing. It can be seen that your family disapproves of your research on antique jewelry. Yeah, they think I'm not doing my job properly, and my family has told me about this many times, Feinstein said helplessly. The situation in my family is relatively complicated. My parents have given me more resources than others, so many of my peers are dissatisfied with me. They try to find fault with me. There's nothing we can do about it. Galen learned about Finestine's family background from Finn. That was not an ordinary business family, but a super large family that had certain connections with the upper echelons of the Federation, and its industries spanned several major provinces. Compared to Jia Long's uncle and his master Fei Baiyun, they are not on the same level at all. The Feinstein family even has its own armed private team, and her father is also considered one of the most important and powerful figures in the family. The two sat for a while, and then a middle-aged mature man walked into the room, wearing a black suit, with a well-proportioned figure and looking polite. Miss, it's time to go back. The time you said has come. Feinstein nodded and sat up from the sofa. I know. This is my bodyguard Ankh. Then I'll leave first. You can watch slowly. Okay. Garin nodded and glanced at the man named Ankh. His eyes couldn't help but narrow slightly. He felt a similar temperament to Jinhuan number 102 from this person, even stronger than Jinhuan. Garin glanced at the man's waist and saw that if it wasn't bulging, he seemed to have something inserted into it. If a person with such skill is equipped with a pistol, as long as his marksmanship is not too bad, I won't have any room to resist. As expected of a big family, people from big places are just different. The arrogance he had gained from his great skill just now suddenly subsided. After Feinstein and her bodyguards left, Garin sat alone on the sofa, with the faint body fragrance left by the beautiful young lady still lingering in the air. If that golden ring was also good at pistols that day, I probably wouldn't have been able to get it so easily. Sure enough, hot weapons are the natural enemies of warriors. He sighed, picked up the black tea and took a sip. Fortunately, there is a black jade plate. Now I have new attribute points to improve. He glanced at the attribute bar below his vision. The power above had been increased by 0.1 due to the White Cloud secret method, and was now 2.11. The potential has increased to 164%. It's just that the speed is too slow. It only increased a little in a week. After looking at the skill bar again, he skipped subjects and other subjects. His eyes were directly on the Baiyun's secret technique, and he stayed there for 3 seconds. Baiyun's secret technique remained motionless, and it was obvious that it could no longer increase. Have you really reached the top? Forget it, just add it to intelligence. The situation has been a mess recently. Let's see how improving intelligence will help sort out the situation. He hesitated for a moment and looked directly at intelligence. Snapped. A breath of fresh air flows into the intelligence category. The original intelligence of 1.20 instantly changed to 1.50. Garen felt his head go cold, and his brain that had been feeling a little dull suddenly became extremely clear. It seems that thinking reaction and logical memory have been improved to a certain extent. It's just that this improvement is a bit vague, and there is no way to compare the effect with actual reference. According to the standard unit I established first, the average level of normal people is calculated as 1, so now I have exceeded half of the average intelligence of ordinary people. There should be no intelligence restrictions in some subjects. In the skill column, many subjects have a minimum limit on intelligence. If you have not reached it, you can only study step by step. Once you reach it, you will be able to remember it with a photograph. You can draw inferences about other things in this lesson and be agile and reach the level of mastery of the subjects after adding points as quickly as possible. With his mind clearer, Garen pondered for a moment about the current situation. If I want to get the antiques of misfortune without risk, then I can step aside now and ask Grace to pay attention to the progress of Mercury and the others in Tailai. The Golden Circle can also contact the Antiques of Misfortune through Grace's original company and purchase the Antiques of Misfortune. As long as they found a new Antique of Doom, and I was able to bid as hard as I could to get it. The only worry was not having enough money to buy it. That's a solution, but it requires a larger amount of money. But we can also think about it differently. I can judge whether the antique is real by absorbing potential. In this way, I have absolute identification authority for doomed antiques or mysterious jewelry. As long as I add some knowledge and experience in jewelry antique identification, it should be no problem to become a professional doomed antique appraiser to detect their misfortune. Tailai Mercury probably didn't grasp the secret of the potential of the Antique of Doom, otherwise he wouldn't have given me the black jade plate so easily. Garen had been in contact with Tailai Mercury and knew one key point. What other people see as doomed antiques are just precious objects with a bit of mystery and weird legends. In his eyes, the antiques of misfortune are good things that can absorb potential and enhance themselves. It doesn't have to be my own. I can completely come into contact with the antiques of misfortune as a mixed appraiser and collector. I want both the detective and the golden ring to realize that I am the only one who can appraise the real antiques of misfortune without any mistakes. In this case, you can completely stay out of the matter and at the same time achieve your goal in disguise. It has to be said that after increasing his intelligence, Garen felt that his brain was indeed much clearer. He could arrange things properly in a few seconds and find a suitable position for himself. Then all that's left now is to cram in the antique appraisal knowledge. The old man should have experience in this area. Garen immediately thought of Old Man Gaywo from the Dolphin Antique Shop. There is also the book that Old Man Gaywo took out mysteriously last time. I don't know what it is. It seems that the old man also has some secrets of his own. But as long as it is not a trouble, it doesn't matter. As soon as he thought of it, Garen stood up first and searched a series of rooms for books on antique appraisal, but unfortunately there was not a single one. I ran to the special books room on the right side of the library and searched again, but found nothing. And there are very few books on the right. After leaving the library, Garen found a carriage and went straight to the Dolphin Antique Shop. Sitting on the carriage, Galen felt a little irritated. He had obviously added so many attribute points to his body and his physical strength had reached a strong level, but when he met Finestein's brother just now, he was so condescending. The tone was still something he couldn't refute. Whether it's Fabian's Bayun martial arts school or his uncle's Grey Company, they are just ordinary small characters in the eyes of others. As for the personal force that I am proud of, not to mention firearms, even my senior brothers and sisters will definitely not be able to defeat him. Force is not just about strength. He closed his eyes slightly to rest his mind. Listening to the crisp clatter of horses' hooves and the rolling sound of wheels, Garen recalled for a moment his life experiences these days since time travel. Although I have talents and abilities, I am still an ordinary martial arts disciple, a student of Shenying Academy, and the son of an ordinary company employee family. I still have to walk step by step. I am still far from being truly powerful. It's far away. He recalled his encounter in Yinsha Castle and felt even more weak. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 39. The carriage slowly stopped in front of the Dolphin Antique Shop. Garen jumped out of the car, gave money to the driver, and walked to the door of the antique store. The door was closed and it was unusually quiet inside. He looked up at the store sign, raised his hand and started knocking on the door. Open the door, old man. I'm coming. The shop door creaked open from the inside. Old man Gawo grabbed Garen, pulled him in, and quickly closed the door. The store was extremely dark, with only a kerosene lamp placed on the table in front of the bookshelf. Under the faint yellow light, there was a small brown-red hourglass, with fine black sand inside slowly dripping down, making a rustling sound. Garen slightly adjusted to the light in the store and glanced at the hourglass on the table. What is this? Your new good thing. The old man didn't speak, but slowly walked to the table and sat down. The light illuminated his face, which made him look extremely old and tired. This is a black hourglass given to me by a friend. It is used to measure time. It is said that one time it is turned upside down, it can measure a long time. He stretched out his hand and shook the hourglass. It's been 2 weeks since I got it, and only 1/5 of it has leaked out. Do you think it's slow? It's indeed very slow. Garen frowned slightly, looking at the old man's increasingly older face. What's wrong with you, old man? You haven't looked very good lately. He found a stool and sat in front of the table. He turned on the kerosene lamp and the light suddenly became much brighter. Maybe he's sick. Old man Gawo smiled, but he was no longer as obscene as before. Tell me, why are you here? Normally you wouldn't run to me if you have nothing to do. Don't I respect the elderly? You are a lonely old man in his 70s or 80s staying here alone. Aren't I afraid that no one will take care of you? Garen smiled. By the way, where are your children? Where are your relatives? How come I've never seen it before? Who knows, the old man muttered, with a dazed look on his face. Okay, don't talk about this, tell me about your business. Your kid will definitely not run to me if he is fine. You really understand me? Looking at the old man's expression, Garen knew that his children might be mentioning the old man's sadness, so he changed the subject. When I came here, I wanted to ask you for advice on how to appraise antiques. Appraisal of antique jewelry. You must have opened an antique shop, so you should know something about it, right? This is simple. The old man sat up straight and glanced sideways at Garen. It's just that he stretched out his hand and spread it in front of Garen. Snapped. A stack of banknotes was slapped into the old man's hand. His hands were still open. Garen frowned, took out another 1,000 yuan and slapped it on the old man's hand. Old man, please look carefully, this is a stack of 1,000 yuan. I know it's 1,000 yuan per stack, but the appraisal industry requires long-term accumulation and knowledge and experience. I have accumulated it for so long, so it's nothing to ask for your hard work, right? Old man Gawo collected it slowly. For 2,000 yuan, he looked very happy. It's only 2,000, which is a bargain for you, kid. Then let me first introduce you to the way to appraise a person. The old man cleared his throat. The so-called identification actually refers to several aspects of effort. 1. Identifying authenticity. 2. Judging the age. 3. Judging the place of origin, and 4. Judging the value of the craftsmanship. Each of these 4 aspects requires a long time of understanding, learning and accumulation. Experience. Which side do you want to learn first? Can we study together? I am very confident in myself. Study together. The old man looked at Galen under the light, and suddenly he was startled again. His eyes seemed to be in a trance. Study together, have confidence in yourself? It's a pity that you have no talent, his last sentence seemed to be murmuring. After Garen's physical fitness improved, his hearing was good, and he vaguely heard the old man's whisper, but he didn't pay too much attention to it. Everyone has secrets, and it is their right not to be told by others. Can I learn to identify authenticity first? No problem, the old man seemed to be interested. He opened his mouth, pulled out the drawer from under the table, took out a stack of white paper and 2 quills, then unscrewed the ink bottle on one side and dipped it in it. Dip. Appraisal of authenticity is actually the most difficult aspect to master in the appraisal industry. This actually depends on the accumulated experience and the time spent playing with antiques. He drew a circle on the paper with a cross inside. Do you know what this is? He said, pointing to the shape. Don't know about a circular cross window, Garen guessed as he looked at the graphics on the paper. This is a special mark of a master of jewelry craftsmanship during the Great Navigation. If you know the meaning of this mark, you can see the age, level, and category of this mark in subtle ways. Of course, if you don't understand, you will naturally nothing can be seen. Garen nodded thoughtfully. You are trying to tell me that to identify authenticity, you must not only look at the manufacturing details of the object itself, but also combine it with the origin and history behind it, as well as some special background knowledge, in order to truly identify the authenticity. Fake. Haha. Your mind is very flexible and your reaction is good. The old man was just about to say this key point, but Garen guessed it directly, and his expression was slightly surprised. I'm also going to show you a high-quality imitation product. You can't tell the authenticity except for the markings. I'm going to give you a vivid example. I didn't expect you to react right away. He paused. Now that you know it, you should understand that to identify authentic and fake antiques, what you need is to understand the history, craftsmanship of different eras, famous masters, schools, categories. Famous illusions, manufacturing styles, and factory location, etc. Many times, by combining these things and looking at antique jewelry, we can draw more realistic conclusions. So what I need to learn first is this background knowledge. Garen nodded. Are there any integrated books? Yes, there is, but just reading the book is not very useful. You read it first, and then I will tell you about my own appraisal experience and special appraisal methods. Let's go step by step. There are many things that are not found in books. In the appraisal industry, in addition to vision, you also need to use smell, hearing, touch, and taste. So just having a theory is meaningless. But you should read the book first. The old man rummaged around on the bookshelf and found a white-covered tome. This is the history of jewelry. He flipped through it again and took out a thicker black-covered book. This is an antique faction and its historical development. Stack the 2 books together and push them in front of Garen. Take it back and read it. Come back to me after reading it. Garen looked at the 2 tomes speechlessly. When should I see these 2 books? One of them must have thousands of pages, right? Don't be in a hurry, read it slowly, just finish it within a month. The old man waved his hand. Okay, get out of here, I'm going to close the stall and go to bed. Garen picked up the 2 books and said, then I'll leave first. I'll come back to you after reading them. Oh, by the way, the old man slapped his head, aren't you asking about the book from last time? Since you like that book so much, I'll give you a little gadget as a souvenir. He reached out and fumbled around in his crotch, and finally pulled out a small pendant, which looked like an open book. Here you go. He threw it over. Garen caught it and looked at it. The pendant was only the size of a thumbnail. It was made very delicately and was completely black. There was a strange dark red symbol in the center of the opened page. What's this? It came with the book when I bought it, just keep it. The old man reached out and scratched his crotch again, it seemed a little itchy. Garin felt a chill and quickly put the pendant into his trouser pocket. I asked you, where did you get this thing from? Are you disgusted? Okay, I'm leaving first. Go ahead, the old man waved his hands and looked impatient. After coming out of the antique shop, Garin waited for a carriage in front of the store for a while. No carriage passed by for more than 10 minutes. The location of this place was not very good, and there were very few people coming by carriage. He had no choice but to hold the book and walk along the street to the intersection of Burnington Street. When he reached the floor of his uncle's house, he raised his head and glanced at the window of his uncle's house, just in time to see Lombas quickly walk away from the window, leaving only the sash still shaking, as if he was deliberately avoiding him. Galen originally wanted to go up and see his uncle, but when he saw that Lombas was also at home, he suddenly lost interest. Ever since he had an unpleasant incident with Lombas last time, he felt upset when he saw this guy. This guy has been quite calm recently. Garin took a few steps forward while holding the book, when suddenly there was a rush of footsteps behind him. Brother Garin, a clear girl's voice came from behind. Garin turned around and saw a young girl with a red face running towards him. The girl wore a thin white cotton coat with a waistband, and a pair of white water-brushed jeans that perfectly highlighted the tight curves of her buttocks and long legs. She only looked about 13 or 14 years old, and Seong Ou had little development. When the girl ran over, she was greeted with a light girlish body fragrance, and her short reddish hair gave her a refreshing and energetic feeling. Brother Garin, you've passed by here, why don't you come up and sit down? The girl was none other than my uncle's other daughter, Philia. Unlike Longbas, Philia has always been very enthusiastic about Garin. Perhaps this is because Garin used to particularly like to play with children. I didn't see Philia here. Garin smiled and reached out to pinch the girl's little nose. Why did you cut your hair? I'm learning martial arts now. The girl made a basic gesture. Where's uncle? We are entertaining guests at home. They talk about complicated and troublesome things. It's boring anyway. Brother Jialong, can you come up and play with me? Philia Candle. Jialong shook his arm. Forget it, uncle is talking about things at home, so I won't disturb him. Also, Dad heard that you were accepted as a disciple by Master Byun, and he was very unhappy about it. Philia lowered her voice. Dad said that I don't want you to waste time learning martial arts. A little self-defense is enough, but it won't be enough to devote all your energy to it. That's a waste of time. Garin frowned. I thought uncle would be very happy. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 40. Dad said that he was planning to let you take care of his industrial business. He has been optimistic about you since he was a child. Neither Longbas nor I are this material. If you spend too much time on martial arts, you will fall behind in other aspects. A lot. If it was in ancient times, he wouldn't object, but times are different now. No matter how advanced your martial arts is, you can be surrounded by just a few guns. Philia imitated her father's tone and repeated the original words. Uncle wants me to take care of business. Galen was startled. How is that possible? Why is it impossible? Dad made this decision a long time ago. Anyway, I don't care. I am not good at studying and my martial arts training is average. The teacher also said that I have no talent. If I can't support myself in the future, it will all depend on you, Faye. Leah hugged Garen's arm and acted coquettishly. Dad said that you are the only one of the younger generation who will not let the industry decline after inheriting his business. If Longbas and I were to completely destroy the family property in a few years. Uncle has such high expectations for me. Garen was a little speechless. He had always felt that his uncle's care for him had gone beyond a certain level and was better than that for his own children. In Garen's memory as a child, if he and Longbas had a conflict, Longbas would definitely be beaten. This favoritism is not ordinary. This also led to Longbus always looking down on Garen and being extremely dissatisfied. Let's go, Philia pulled Garen's arm back. Garen had no choice but to follow Philia towards the entrance of the floor. But after walking a few steps, a tall young man with a cold face suddenly walked out from the entrance mixed with a few passers-by. Are you Garen? The boy wore a white tights on his upper body and black trousers on his lower body, which highlighted his strong muscle lines. Garen stopped and glanced at the young man. Who are you? I am Longbus's cousin. I heard that you used your own martial arts to defeat Longbus. Is this true? The young man frowned and stared at Garen. What do you mean? I suppressed Longbus. Where did you hear that? Garen originally wanted to walk through the door, but was blocked by the young man's deliberate step, and he frowned. Okay, stop making trouble, make way, I want to go in. You are also a member of the family. It is not appropriate for outsiders to teach you a lesson. Today I am here specifically to teach you a lesson for my cousin. The young man deliberately blocked the entrance and exit. Are you sick? Garen looked at him speechlessly. Philia beside him had silently walked aside, as if watching the fun. He already knew where this young man came from. His uncle's wife, Philia Longbus's mother, was a member of an ancient family in another place, and part of the original marriage between the two parties was a marriage of interest. Now my uncle has made it clear that he will adopt his property to another nephew who is not related by blood. This frustrated the hopes of many young men from the family who had been deliberately befriending Longbus Philia. So a conflict of interest arises. Philia's mother's family is not good at running industries, and its income has declined in recent years. Naturally, his focus was on his uncle's increasingly prosperous self-made industry. When my uncle started from scratch, he also used a lot of influence from his wife for development. It can be said that the strength of his wife's family also played a big role in his growth. Now the uncle who is the controller suddenly said that he wants to hand over the industrial business to his sister's son. What does this mean? Garen's mind turned around and he reacted immediately. This means that the uncle believes that all the boys and girls on his wife's side of the family are not as good as his galleons. He proved it by saying that only Galleon could guarantee the longevity of his industry. At the beginning, great efforts were made in the development of the industrial business, and it was natural for him to regard his uncle's property as part of his own. Now that this trouble suddenly appeared, he naturally felt unbalanced. Looking at the young man in front of him again, Garen felt confident. It must have been Longbus's idea for you to come to me, right? Come on, stop making trouble, don't block the road, let's go in and have a good talk. The young man sneered, tilted his body, and blocked the road again. He crossed his arms and looked at Garen coldly. Garen frowned. This is not what you think. Let's go in and talk about it slowly. Don't be used as a weapon by Longbus. Just believe whatever he says. He didn't want to conflict with the people over there. The family over there was not an ordinary small family. It was composed of gray and black elements, and was not as complex as usual. Once this reputation is established and a conflict occurs, it will cause a lot of trouble. This is not what Longbus said. The young man stared at Garen with a sneer, leaning to one side and continuing to block the road. I asked you to get out of the way. Garen was a little impatient. He was in no mood to play brawl with a little guy right now. So what if you don't get out of the way? The young man refused to give in. Garen's eyes turned cold, he reached out with his right arm and pinched the boy's neck. Snapped. The boy kicked Garen's hand hard with a side kick, making a crisp sound. Fine dust fell from the place where their hands and feet collided, shaking out fine white ash. Following that, he quickly retracted his feet and performed another spinning side kick, forming a circle. His toes pointed sharply at Garen's wrists. Snapped. The strong wind brought up by the trouser legs made a whistling sound through the air. The boy's movements looked extremely graceful and beautiful, and he kicked Garen in the same position with 2 consecutive kicks. Then take 1 step back and stand still. Is this the end? Garen looked at him inexplicably. The young man's face turned pale, and there was a hint of sweat on his forehead. It was obvious that those moves just now were not easy for him. Seeing that the other party didn't even move his body, he already knew how big the gap was. Garen glanced at him lightly, stood there without moving, patted the dust on his hands, and walked directly into the door from the out of the way. His palms and wrists that were kicked were not even red. You don't want to leave today unless I explain clearly, the young man shouted angrily. He rushed forward and kicked Garen on the soft flesh of his chin. Garen's face turned cold, and he slapped his right hand, knocking the boy's right leg away, then turned around and kicked. Bang! There was a click. An adult man behind him was kicked hard in the side and hit the wall next to the door with a muffled sound. The man leaned against the door frame and struggled fiercely for several times, but was unable to straighten up. His eyes when he looked at Garen suddenly changed. He was the boy's bodyguard, and he originally attacked from behind. Unexpectedly, Garen turned around and kicked him in the side. His arm was completely broken and he couldn't even stand upright. The opponent's strength was far beyond his expectation. Garen looked across at him and gave him a cold look, with a cold and unmoved look in his eyes. The bodyguard's heart trembled. He had seen this look on the captain of the team before. He knew that if he moved again, he will really kill me. He froze and did not dare to move. This sudden change not only stunned the young man, but also Philia on the side opened her mouth slightly with a dumbfounded expression. Several passers-by who were watching the excitement couldn't help but gasp when they saw the bodyguard's leg. The whole person was kicked away like a sack and hit the doorframe. The sound of bone fractures was extremely clear. It hurts enough just to look at and hear it. Everyone felt a little chilly in their arms. Garen sneered, knowing that the feud was complete. Walking up to the young man, he stretched out an index finger and touched his forehead. Even the bodyguard is so weak. No wonder my uncle decided to hand over the family fortune to me. What's the use of incompetent people like you living in this world? It's better to die. Snapped. With a flick of his index finger, the boy's head tilted back slightly, and a red mark popped up on his forehead. In the face of Garen's killing intent, his pupils narrowed and dilated instantly. The moment he was lightly flicked on the forehead, he really felt as if he was about to be killed. Don't kill me, he suddenly cried loudly. He rolled and crawled back several meters and hid behind a large vase. The look in Garen's eyes was already full of fear. Garen smiled and straightened up. He knew that the other party had been completely frightened by him. From now on, he would become the most terrifying shadow in the other party's mind. Even if someone provoked him again, they would not dare to go against him. This is what he wants to achieve. Such a young man is mentally immature and won't be able to do anything if he's just a little scared. Since the feud was completely settled the moment the bodyguard attacked, he wouldn't be afraid of anything. The right way is to directly destroy their minds and resolve the matter once and for all. Let's go, Philia. He turned back to look at the girl standing outside the door. The girl looked at him, her lips were trembling, and there was a hint of fear in her eyes. The moment Garen walked over and tapped the boy on the forehead, she really thought the boy would be killed. She had only seen that kind of cold murderous intent from her father's bodyguards. When she heard Garen's call, she opened her mouth, her voice a little dry. Brother Garen. That person's name is D. Lexima. He is a regular fighting master who has passed the amateur level. Don't tell me what kind of super master his so-and-so is, Garen said speechlessly. Philia calmed down her emotions, came closer and whispered. No. His brother Deliando doesn't know how to fight, but he is the most vicious junior in the family there. Now he has created a career in society. You have to be careful. A gangster, Garen frowned. Philia nodded. he is the #1 figure in the provincial government. You know very well. I also heard about it from the chats of the elders during family gatherings during the holidays. You have to be careful. This time it's not just a conflict between the younger generations, Philia said worriedly. Don't worry, Garen nodded. Now he has a black jade plate in his body, and he is getting stronger every moment. Even now, ordinary small pistols pose no threat to him at a distance. Only aiming and shooting at close range is dangerous. There are rules for fighting within the family, so don't worry. Let's go up and see my uncle first. Garen shook his neck and made a snapping sound. Dark side or dishonorable means are generally not allowed to be used in intra-family struggles. Generally, it is necessary to use force to overwhelm others and confront them head-on. Otherwise, it is impossible to get the support of the elders. Families with too intense internal struggles generally won't last long, and internal friction alone is enough to separate the family's interests. Therefore, this type of struggle is carried out within a set scope, with strict rules and boundaries. He is actually not interested in his uncle's industry. He has talents and abilities. It is very easy for him to create his own industry. It only requires time and energy. But that's not what he's after. Only the strength of one's own strength is the true path. As long as they don't break the boundaries, everything is fine. Garen licked his lips.